Okay.
All good?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. So I'm Gavin Stark. I work for Natural England. Natural England's a government agency in England. We do stuff. We're into restoring nature, connecting people with nature. That's what we do. And very much one of the things that we do as a government agency is we've got a huge part in the development and the delivery of national trails. And what I'm going to do this morning is to tell you a little bit about the King Charles III England Coast Path. And I'm going to really sort of focus on one or 2 points around how data and evidence has been sort of at the heart of being able to deliver this programme. First thing to say, I mean, it was interesting pulling together these slides for this talk this morning and sort of linking back to the two presentations we've just had from Orla and about Avondale. One thing that sort of struck me there was both starting with having an idea or having a vision for something, and that as I was looking back here, having been involved in Coast Path for quite a few years now, I was finding it really hard to think back to that time kind of before we were actually doing Coast Path, because it feels like we've been doing it for so long now. And remembering those times, where there were just a few people sat around with really big ideas for what we wanted to do, for what the problem was, and how we wanted to go about solving it. But the point I want to make here was we realised very early on at that stage when we had those ideas that it's all very well having that idea, but to turn that idea into reality, we were going to have to get a lot of people to sort of see that vision and go along with that vision and do things to make it happen, because we were really ambitious about what we wanted to achieve. And that's where the data and the evidence was really central to all of that. We recognised that. So one of the early things that we did was we did a couple of bits of research. One of them was we went out and we did an audit of coastal paths all around the English coast. And another thing that we did was we did some research into public perceptions about access to the coast. And through those bits of evidence work, we found and were able to show that at that time, coastal access was really patchy. There were some good bits in the southwest. There'd been the Southwest National Trail. It had been there from the 70s, although there were still some gaps and things. The northwest was sort of particularly bad, but within all of that, it was a real sort of postcode lottery as to sort of coastal, as to the situation regarding sort of coastal access. And it was getting worse. Things were falling into the sea, so we were always kind of losing bits of coastal paths. The stuff we did around sort of visitor perceptions was interesting. We found actually that people generally thought that there were access rights over the foreshore, for example. We found that local people were really sure about where they could go locally and where they could walk locally. They might not have been correct in their assumptions about that, but they were completely confident on it, whereas visitors were much less certain about where they could go when they were coming to a place, and that was sort of affecting things. And what we concluded from all of that really was that absolutely critical, and this sort of came out yesterday at the end of the day, I think, is having for everyone really, is having the sort of confidence and the certainty about, not just about access, but about that path and where the path is, and that it's going to be looked after and it's going to be well maintained way into the future. And that's important for your visitors, but of course it's also important for prospective tourism businesses to know that they can sort of build on that, or for landowners as well to kind of know that route is going to be sort of taken care of into the future. Okay. Move on to the next slide. So as I was saying, we were really ambitious with what we wanted to do with the King Charles III England Coast Path. So a big element of it is the trail, and it's a continuous walking route well-maintained walking route around the English coast. But other components to it are something called the coastal margin. And the coastal margin is a band of land that is linked to the England coast path. So it's all land seawards of the coast path down to Lonely Water, and sometimes bits of land landward of the coast path. But it makes this continuous band around the English coast within which coastal access rights, or people have rights to be able to right of access on foot. Of course, there's a load of other stuff going on at the coast. There are houses, gardens, nuclear power stations, ports, etc. So many areas of land are exempted, and within the coastal margin, Natural England have and other agencies have powers to restrict or to exclude or to limit those coastal access rights to make the whole thing work. And then the third thing I was just going to mention here, really sort of critical, we realised early on that the real problem for paths at the coast is they do keep falling into the sea, as I say. So as part of the case we were able to put forward within the package of legislation that was created around this is this provision called rollback. And what that means is that it's easier when paths fall into the sea, when the coast path falls into the sea, it's easier to do the work to sort of legally reinstate it on a new alignment, sort of inland where it was. Okay, so I'll just highlight one sort of point around this in our approach to how we ended up doing it. So that was the kind of how we got there and the evidence, and what happened next was there was new legislation. So there was a new law around sort of creating new sort of customised laws created around coastal access to make it happen. And that was very much a case of sort of bringing together bits of sort of existing legislation that were working, but joining them up and making the work to be able to deliver the programme. So for example, we will often align the coast path along an existing public right-of-way around the coast, but we don't create any new public rights-of-way when we're doing coast path delivery. Instead, where we create new sections of path, they use a different legal mechanism for people to have that right. But all of that kind of complicated register, it's all sort of under the hood. It doesn't really matter as far as the user is concerned, because what the end result is that you end up with this access corridor and access rights where you need them to be able to enjoy your visit to the coast. And there are various other bits in that legislation. One other thing I'll mention is that we included was that the method by which we delivered the programme is through this statutory scheme that was kind of established at that point. And that was really important, and the evidence is really important there. So when we're doing our alignment work, for example, within the scheme, there are sort of statutory criteria that we need to sort of work our way through, which are all about sort of balancing the public and the private interest. So we need to be able to show, when we're making our proposals for where the coast path should be, we need to be able to demonstrate and have the evidence to demonstrate our choice of alignment when we put that forward. And it's been really important for us having that on that statutory footing. So another aspect to sort of data, another point I wanted to make around data, I suppose, is just how much data we've been managing and processing over the years. When I look back to some of the early national trails, the South West Coast Path, I looked at the kind of the documents that was associated with those proposals. It's about a dozen pages of text. You know, we have generated vast volumes of pages and pages and volumes of data to do all of this, you know, including for all of the 2,700 miles of the coast path. You know, for every inch of it, we've gone out and we've, with handheld GPS, sort of captured what that new alignment is, captured data about the path surface, where a new signpost had been needed, a new bridge had been needed, and etc., etc. So all of that data, and there are over 21,000 sort of trail sections that we've created with all this information. All of that data sort of sits behind then the formal proposals that we made, like this example here I've got on the screen, that were then sort of consulted on. So there was an opportunity for people to make representations, for landowners to make objections, and so on. So a huge amount of data management, and including as part of all of that process that we have contacted apparently 25,346 owners and occupiers about our proposals. And one of the things that we're really proud of, and I'm really proud of with our delivery teams that we're doing this work and talking to affected owners, is the very low rate of objection that we've had. And to date, only 20 objections have actually been upheld so far, and we've had a very low rate of objection. I think doing all of that work, talking to people and explaining to people about the process. Just to mention, absolutely at the heart of what Natural England does is about protecting the environment, and very much that was at the heart of how we did coastal access, always looking for in sensitive locations, how can we use the intervention that establishing this path and what's associated with it can help to manage manage pressure from visitors in sensitive locations. And that, of course, again, had a huge data component to it. We looked at data from, sort of over 150 of the top tier European sites and numerous other SSSIs, local nature reserves, heritage sites and so on. So all of that data had to be processed, worked through, assessments done, and all of that informed the detailed design. So we're not quite there yet, but we're getting there very much. There's 2,000, here's a few figures, 2,704 miles we think will be the final length of the King Charles Stirling Coast Path. Most of that has now been approved, so it's gone through all of that formal process that I was describing. The way we've been delivering it is 8 hub teams, and we broke it all down into lots of 6-7 stretches. And as a result, quite a bit of it's open already. There's over 1,000 miles open already. We've had a lot to contend with. COVID's been talked about. We even decided recently to change the name of the England Coast Path, which was an interesting thing to do. Created a bit of a headache for the people who were trying to make signs to fit the new name on, for example. But overall, it's been a great chance to get a bit more publicity for the work that we're doing, and to create a really iconic brand around it. And our sort of commitment now is to get 96% of the English coast to be fully walkable by the end of the year. We have also sort of realised that this is a huge investment going into creating the England Coast Path, and we want to be able to show what return there is on that investment. So back in 2017, we commissioned some sort of baseline socioeconomic study. So this is some of the highlights from that study. So that was a sort of pre-intervention, if you like, situation. And what we'll be doing in a few years' time is going back to repeat this exercise to see what impact the programme has had on these metrics. Okay, so those are all of my slides. And I just wanted to, sort of wrap up by sort of linking back to, I think, what we said at the end of the session yesterday when we were putting those words up on the screen. And one of the word that came at the centre was all about sort of commitment and resources and money and funding and things. And I think I was sort of reflecting there, having been sort of in the business for a little while and kicking around national trails for a while, how, for me, one of the things about national trails is they've just got this enduring quality. We've been doing them in England for over 50 years now, and somehow we've managed to continue to find the resources to maintain and look after them to a really high standard. And I know from being closely involved that isn't always easy. There are always challenges. There are always other things that money could be spent on. So I think my final comment to make is how important the data and the evidence is to be able to continue to make the case for that investment that will retain and keep these trails well maintained for future generations. Thank you very much.